Before we jump into today's show, I've got a really exciting announcement to make. The autumn cohorts for Start Your Podcast group program are now open. There are 5 dates between September and October, and it's a 6-week program that will get you launched before Christmas. So if podcasting was on your to-do list this year, if you really want to get your podcast up and done by the end of 2023, then come and join me for one of those cohorts and let's make it happen. I have a free masterclass available for you called Understanding the Power of Podcasting. You can go over to donnaeade.com/masterclass, watch the masterclass and get access to that enrollment. I hope to see you in one of the autumn cohorts very soon. That's donnaeade.com/masterclass. Let's get back to the show. If I said to you, #whataboutweddings, I am pretty sure that if you are in the wedding industry, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, today I have a fantastic treat for you. And if you do, I have a fantastic treat for you too, because today on the show we have Tamryn Settle. She has been in the wedding industry for 18 years, first as a multi-award winning wedding planner and author, and now as a senior writer at Love My Dress and as an independent wedding celebrant. She is also one of the campaign managers at What About Weddings, alongside Annabel Beeforth of Love My Dress and Jessie Westwood of Studio Sorres. So join me today for a really good episode where we talk about our passion for the industry and what we can do to help the #WhatAboutWeddings campaign. Let's dive in. Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast. This week we have a fantastic guest with us. I'm so pleased that I'm getting to bring so many guests on the podcast to start the new year. We have someone very special with us. It's Tamryn Settle, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself in a moment. But the reason I asked Tamryn on was because she is one of the brains behind #WhatAboutWeddings, and that has been such a fantastic campaign that's been going on since the start of lockdown number 1. So Tamryn, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really nice to have a conversation with somebody after just sitting in my office for a long time.
So if you want to start, just tell us a little bit about your background and who you are for those of you who don't know.
Oh my goodness, this feels like this could take a while, because I've been around for quite a while now. I was thinking about this earlier, that I'm coming up to almost 18 years in weddings. So I was obviously a baby when I started out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm still clinging on to my youth. But yes, I've been in weddings for 18 years. I started out as a wedding planner and coordinator a long time ago. Built that business up and then sold it. Kind of got to a point where my son was growing up, and the thought of spending every weekend at weddings and not really seeing him by the time he went to school was really, really difficult to contemplate. So moved on and did a lot of writing. I've written a couple of books. I've written for a lot of magazines, done a bit of TV in my day. And then got back into the industry, sort of was really missing working with businesses and working with couples and really hearing about weddings. So I started working with Annabel at Love My Dress back in 2013. And have been part of the team there for however many years is that now? Almost 7 years, my goodness.
Time just keeps moving, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh, time. Yeah, let's not talk about how quickly it's going, because it'll just make us all feel dreadful. I love that, because we get to work with so many amazing businesses. We get to hear from so many couples about their days, and I love it. That feels like that keeps me really connected with everything that's going on. But I'm also a wedding celebrant, so I have the joyous job of spending my Saturdays through great parts of the year now. Actually, I was going to say just summer, but it really isn't summer. Conducting ceremonies for couples all over the UK, really. So I love that. I absolutely love it. There's nothing better than getting to know a couple. You write them a ceremony that's just theirs, and it's all about them, and then you get to be there and share it with them and their guests on the day. And then, the lovely thing is, you hear guests afterwards sort of making comments like, oh, that was so them, that could have been, you know, I remember those stories, I remember all these bits and pieces, and you think, yeah, I've done it, I've sort of captured exactly what makes these guys so special to all of their friends and family, and I love it. I still cry, I cry at pretty much everyone. I still get quite emotional, but yeah, so I am that indeed wedding junkie who has sort of, I guess, weddings coursing through my veins after 18 years, and I can't quite kick the habit, but I love it,
And
I still love it. It's very special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is so lovely, the difference actually, and not to sort of disrespect the registrars at all, because, you know, every part of the wedding is fantastic, but they're very, very restrained with what they say. Like, I was a wedding coordinator for a hotel for a 9-month period. I loved it. I absolutely loved being involved in the weddings in that way. And, you know, obviously I heard the ceremony every weekend, you know, and it was just the same words.
Yeah,
and I was just like, everybody laughs at it because obviously they've not heard it before, but this is like the third time I've heard it this month, and it's no different to the first one. And so that flexibility that you've got as a celebrant is,
yeah, and that was, I think, one of the things that sort of struck me about it most was exactly the same. When I was a wedding planner, wedding coordinator, you'd hear the same things kind of like every weekend, and it would sort of only vary a little bit. And I thought, gosh, we make such an effort about personalizing every single aspect of the day, you know, from, well, literally down to the nth degree. Every single thing is personal, apart from, in most cases, the bit that is the meaningful centerpiece of the whole day. And again, like, absolutely not dissing what any choice that anybody makes, but I think a lot of couples have come to that realization as well, that sort of thing of, well, we don't necessarily maybe have a strong faith, we don't necessarily have a strong tie to a church or a place, we just want to be sort of churning out standard vows, and they're quite happy to go off and do the legal bit when, you know, before. Usually most people go off and have that little ceremony before, and then the type of ceremonies that I conduct, I guess, are very much ones where people, one of the things most of my clients say to me is, we still want it to feel like a wedding. I'm like, yeah, we'll definitely make it feel like a wedding. And the joy of it for me is that we can include or exclude absolutely anything. So bring on any readings you want, bring on any music that you want, bring on all the people that you want. We can work out ways to include, you know, absolutely everything that makes it yours. Even the vows that you take, the promises that you make, the things that you say, they should be the things that really tug on your heartstrings and are relevant to you and your life. It shouldn't just be, you know, choose A, B, or C and say that. It should be, if I'm going to make a promise to someone, that I'm going to stand next to them through thick and thin, through good days and bad, I'm going to say it in a way that is relevant to us. And I think that's, to me, that's one of the lovely things, is sort of working with couples and kind of teasing that out with them. What's important to you? What do you want to say? What are you looking forward to in the future? What do you want to promise and say to somebody? This is the time to kind of, like, you know, let it all hang out emotionally, I guess. And it's lovely when people do, and the reaction that they get from guests for really saying something meaningful is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And yeah, there's all the ceremonies, I love them all, because they're all about the people that you're working with, and it's gorgeous.
It's so good. And to hear you say that, because obviously I've not worked at that end, you know, I've done the photography and, you know, I've done the coordinating, but I haven't really worked with celebrants. And to hear you say that it is a guided process, you know, they're not just like, well, what do you want to say? You can actually, because you've been involved in so many, you can pull those things out of them, things that they wouldn't have even necessarily have thought about, but it just makes it so much more special because you've been able to sort of dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, and it's funny, I often say to people, let's really talk about, you know, and I spend a long time talking to people, which I love, because I love people and their stories, and it's those kind of things that really interest me. So you hear them talking about, you know, the nightclub that they were at, that they first met at, the first holiday that they took, the pet that they've just bought, all of this stuff. And I kind of often quite like to start my ceremonies by recapping that story, because when you think about it, all of the guests are there, they all know you, and they might know both of you, but they all know you from different parts of your life. They might know you from uni, they might know you from school, they might be family that you've not seen for a while. And just kind of recapping that story is kind of like a bit of a way, and I don't want to sound like Rishi Sunak, but it's like a way of throwing your arms around everybody who's there and bringing them all in to the same place, catching everybody up with what's gone on. And it's lovely when you just make a few little references. I remember one wedding where they were talking about the nightclub that they met in, and they both, when they were talking about it, both went, "Oh God, do you remember the sticky carpets?" And that was their both sort of shared memory of this place, was that it had really nasty sticky carpets. So we mentioned sticky carpets in the ceremony, and you could see then the guests in sort of the I say audience, but I guess conversation doesn't sound right either. But you could see the guests who knew them from that time all going, "Oh yeah, the sticky carpets," you know. And it's kind of like, it's a way of like reigniting all of those memories in everybody, and kind of reminding everyone who's there, you're all part of this. This is all part of our shared experience and our lives together. And I love that. I love the reactions that you get from people. So I often say to couples, look, when we're doing that bit at the beginning, don't stand like a normal wedding. Don't stand facing me. Stand off to the side a bit so you can see your guests, right? Those are the people that you love. Those are the people that you've invited. You don't want to just spend half an hour looking at me, because that's really dull. You know, for the bits like that where we're talking to everybody, be part of everything and see those reactions from people, and be part of that experience. You know, don't have your backs to it. So all of those little things we can juggle with and change around, all of that choreography that makes it work, that's better for people. So if there's stuff that they're a bit nervous about, there's one couple I was working with, and the bride was she desperately wanted to write like a sort of a promise that she would say to her husband when she gave him his ring. But she phoned me up and she said, I really want to do this. And I said, yep, no problem, we can sort that out. She said, but I am so nervous, I am going to be so emotional on the day that I'm not going to be able to do it. And I was like, right, this is not a problem. We will have two options. We'll have your option and I'll have something, and I can rewrite basically what you've said for me to read and for you just to sort of give a response to. So, and you tell me during the ceremony, we worked out a little sort of she'd hold my hand, kind of squeezy hand code, said, and we'll just decide then and there what you want to do. Sort of like no pressure. And she did it. She read it out, and we were talking about it afterwards, and she said, I think it was because I wasn't under pressure to do it.
She had a backup.
If I couldn't, there was a backup plan. And again, it's all of that kind of stuff. But that's the thing. It should give us goosebumps, right? We should all be in this industry for the goosebumps and for the fact that this is a flipping privilege that we get to do this job.
Oh yes. Oh my gosh, I just literally put out on Twitter, I literally put those words on Twitter today. Working in the wedding industry is a privilege, and a privilege we are currently being denied. Oh,
it is a privilege, and I miss it. It hurts that I don't get to go out and do this, and it hurts when I get emails from my couple saying we're going to have to postpone our wedding, and you can feel how gut-wrenching it is for them. And it should be a privilege, and the minute it stops being a privilege, we should pack up and go home. Because this isn't just I go into work and I do a job and I go home and it's meant nothing to anybody. You know, I'm not just pushing paper around. I'm part of something really, really special for people that they've saved for and waited for and looked forward to, and it's the start of the next part of something brilliant. That's not something to be taken lightly or messed around with. That's something to sort of really hold on to carefully and look after.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. Because for me, one of the things that I always found funny, like attending weddings as a professional or being a guest, was that the bride's family always sat behind the bride and the groom's family always sat behind the groom. And it's like, I can't see her face. And so I always wanted to sit on the other side, like whichever was my member of the family, I wanted to sit on the opposite side so I could actually see them, because I might not even really know their other half very well, depending, especially if it's family, because you're not necessarily close with your cousins in that respect. And I was just like, I always want to sit on the other side of the church. And I always thought that actually when I get married, I would want to actually have the vicar, because I do want to get married in a church, standing where the bride and groom stand, and I want to stand where he stands, because I want to see everybody, and I want everybody to be able to see my face and to see us, because that's what they've come to see, not to see our backs.
And I am so down with this, because it's just the difference in the atmosphere when the bride and groom are like part of what's going on, rather than that kind of almost block where you're standing with your backs to, why stand with your backs to people that you love? You know, you can just wiggle around a little bit. I don't want to be looked at. Look at those two hotties over there and be part of this event, you know. So yeah, I'm this is my thing, is always kind of just, why don't you just do this? And then people go, God, that makes so much sense. Yeah, that would be lovely. I want to be able to see my dad's face or my mum's face or my friend's face or whatever.
Yeah, if your mum's going to cry, you want to see that she's crying.
Yeah, too right, because you need to be able to use that in future conversations.
Exactly.
Sort of, do you remember when?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know,
I'm totally down with that. We're going to start a new movement. Face your guests.
Part of that thing as well, isn't it? It's like when you talk to people who are at your ceremony, you want to have the same memories as them. If the bride and groom's memories are just looking at me for half an hour, like that's not the same as being part of the same event as everybody else.
Yeah.
So that is something I feel really sort of quite passionate about, is making the choreography work so that everybody is part of the same event. And it's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
That's great. Talking about starting campaigns. See how I nicely segued there.
You did that beautifully.
Anybody would think I do this often. You are very heavily involved in the #WhatAboutWeddings campaign. So for anybody out there that doesn't know about it, which, you know, I just can't imagine there is anybody in the industry that doesn't know about it. Can you how did it come about? Who started it? What was the starting point for the movement?
I will tell my story of it, but I will say,
can you remember that far back? It seems so long ago.
Do you know what? It feels like such a long time ago. So much has happened. And yeah, since March. I mean, goodness, it's no exaggeration to say we're living in a completely different world, is it? So I think it started off, Annabel and I, one moment during the beginning of lockdown, had a conversation, and I think we'd both had sleepless nights about the same thing. That was just a sort of feel of, I can't just sit here. I can't just sit here while couples are going through all sorts of stress and trauma, and businesses are experiencing the same thing. I can't just sit here and be quiet and pretend that you know, if we just keep talking about lovely weddings and fluffy, beautiful things, it will all go back to normal, and I can just almost wipe this out from happening. That was definitely a feeling that we both had, was like, that's really almost irresponsible to deny to a load of people the trauma that they're going through. So we published a feature that was basically sort of asking the question, you know, what is going on? We're here to help. This is the situation that couples are in. This is where suppliers are. You know, this is what kind of like, this is what's needed. We're here. Please talk to us. We're not going anywhere. We know that this is really difficult. And that kind of seemed to draw people to us who felt the same as we did, and had that sort of really strong feeling of, we need to stand up. And you know, Annabel would say that the What About Weddings hashtag just came up on a Zoom call, where I sort of went, yeah, but what about weddings? And actually we need to use that, because that's really good, because that kind of brought everything together. The feeling that we were being ignored, that loads of other industries and sectors and people were getting help and attention and sort of input, and we were getting nothing, and the time was just slipping by. And we all know how weddings have such a long lead time, and you know, things were being done a night before, changes were being made, and we were all just sort of hanging on. And we started doing some surveys. We surveyed couples and businesses. We had focus groups where we got smaller groups of people together and really tried to find out what was going on and where they were, and we're sort of trying to be that liaison point, I guess, between couples and businesses, and trying to help everybody, being fair to everybody on all sides, not giving people false hope, and not sort of you know, trying to be too down or too positive, just trying to find the middle ground all the time, which was quite tricky. And then we started with the now sort of vaguely recognizable, well, they're very recognizable now, the pink tiles with the messages, and just saying to people, you know, we're here, we're not going anywhere. Ask, what about weddings? You know, why is no one looking at this? Why in government is no one looking at this? And we've just had the real feeling that someone made a comment a little while ago about it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. And we felt we had to be a real squeaky wheel. It's just, if we make noise, if we manage to get the message out there that this is really unfair and the damage that it's doing to business, and although we might be 400,000 people in a sector, quite small businesses, collectively we're worth a lot of money to the economy, and we provide so much employment in all corners of the country. We're not just one industry that's focused in one tiny area, and all these people with all of these responsibilities, and couples who've invested money into things and are putting their lives on hold because no one is helping. We just felt we had this real responsibility to be as loud as we could. Yeah. And we were really keen on sort of changing the narrative as much as possible about weddings, and trying to show how important they were to couples, and get rid of that kind of stereotype that, oh, weddings are just a waste of money, and why would you spend that much money on one day, and try and show people just how important they are, sort of culturally, into your life, into your family, into everything. And they're this kind of marker in the sand in your life, and that it isn't something to gloss over. And how people choose to celebrate is no one else's business but that couple, and people need to sit down a little bit when it comes to being quite so ready to criticize everybody else's choices on how they're choosing to spend their time and how they're choosing to celebrate. And we wanted really, really forcefully to put the case for business, that it just felt really, it still irks me, and apologies to anybody who is into fishing or is with a fishing family, that fishing and the fishing industry gets so much attention, and they're worth £284 million a year, around about there. We're worth 14.7 billion. Yeah. And it's taken a flipping global pandemic for people in charge to actually start taking us seriously. And if we've done one thing in this, it's hopefully we've got people to maybe just stop being quite so patronizing and dismissive about people working in the wedding sector, about the importance of weddings, about what they mean to couples. Then we're kind of doing a good job. So that's kind of like the backstory of it. So where we are now, we realised, I guess it was probably in the summer, that this was going to have to get political, that shouting is all well and good, but ultimately, as much noise as we make, we need people on our side to sort of make the noise for us to government. So we've been working really, really hard, talking to MPs across sort of all parties, getting them to meet with constituents, couples and businesses to really hear their stories, so they can take those stories back to Westminster and really forcefully put the case for us. We held a Zoom call before Christmas with the Shadow Minister for Mental Health, Dr. Rosanna Allen-Khan, so she could hear from businesses in the wedding sector just what all those little throwaway comments that they make in Parliament about our jobs not being viable and about weddings just being parties, how much that really, really impacts and how it hurts people. And she was in tears at some point in that call, just like, I can't believe you guys have been made to feel like this by the bunch of posh boys who don't understand what you do and the value of what you do. And we just tried to be there as in many ways as possible for people, whether it's the hundreds and hundreds of Instagram messages we get every day, whether it's the case studies that we gather, whether it's the MPs that we put constituents in touch with, whether it's the information that we give to MPs so that they can go off and ask questions in Parliament on our behalf, whether it's the research that we do on what couples are thinking, so hopefully that feeds into sort of government thinking about what weddings might look like when they reopen. There was a lot of thought a little while ago about it's going to be difficult to reopen weddings because people are going to want to go back. We can't open them up, big weddings and people hugging and kissing. We said that's not what couples feel right now. All our kind of survey results were really showing that people were up for making adjustments to their plans and wanted it to be really safe. Goodness me, we're all making massive adjustments to our life to keep people safe. Yeah. You're going to do it for your friends and family, and trying to get them to understand that, with the hope that allows sort of a faster reopening and for things to move forward. So it's really busy. It's really busy. It's sort of 12 hours a day if we're lucky at the moment, and just trying to keep forward movement all the time, and just need to keep taking a tiny step. And that's frustrating because I don't want to take tiny steps. I want to run and I want to get us reopened and I want to know where we stand, but I will settle for tiny steps because at least we feel like we're getting somewhere. I do think there's that real feeling now that people understand weddings a little bit better than they did a year ago.
I think that was a very valid point you made, is like, even if you're, a guy in politics who doesn't give a monkeys about, the emotional side of weddings, just that figure of how much the wedding industry is worth. Do you want to just repeat that? Because I can't remember how much it was.
It's 14.7 billion
pounds.
Yeah.
Why are you not paying attention? That is a lot of money in our economy, mate.
Exactly. And I think one of the points we had a meeting back in the summer with someone quite high up in government, and sort of making that point to them and saying, look, this is an industry that employs people in every single constituency in the country. This provides flexible employment for women. This is, good, solid employment. It allows people to build up their own business. It allows them financial independence and financial freedom, and and trying to get them to understand how important it is, even from just an economic perspective, that they make all these comments about, people leave all these certain parts of the country because they have to move to the cities for employment, and you're like, but look what you have got in certain places. You have got these opportunities that are flexible and possible for people, and don't turn your back on them because you don't understand them. And it's easy to sort of, when we talk to some of them, you can sort of see their eyes going a little bit when you sort of mention, hair and makeup artists or stationery designers, and then you start talking to them about what that business turns over in a year and how that business supports the family, and maybe how that stops people needing to claim universal credit, or it provides them with other sort of avenues, and it provides a good role model for kids because they can see parents, really going for it with what they're doing. And then the wheels start to turn a little bit with, actually, this is quite a good thing we've got here, and they just didn't see it. They didn't understand it. So I like that feeling that maybe we're just turning the tables a little bit about, we're not just that stereotype, we're not just that thing that you can easily brush away, we're actually something quite important.
Absolutely. So what are you hoping for as we're sort of, in this new lockdown, which, as I said to you before when we were talking, it really knocked me for six, and I was just like, for the industry, because I was like, it puts us straight back at zero, and we were hoping for the spring weddings, and although the government said it, I think vendors were much more wary. I think maybe couples were like, yes, I'll get my spring. I think we were a lot more wary about taking that at face value. But what are you hoping for coming out of the next sort of few months, and what have you been hearing from above or around you that people are trying
the voices above
to put in place to help us when we are looking at opening up?
Well, one of the things I would say is I know how awful this lockdown feels, because I am feeling it too, but we are not at zero. We are so much further forward than we were last March, because we have allies now in Parliament. We have people who want to support us and want to help us. So I don't want anyone to think that we're back at zero, however much it might feel like we are really not. And we are already closer to things than we were.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think that everybody wants, and this is something that comes up a lot in comments from couples and from businesses, we want to know what the plan is. Right? We know that weddings aren't just going to be, it's not going to be Boris making an announcement on a Thursday and weddings are going to reopen at whatever number, doing whatever you like on the Saturday. We know that there's going to be some kind of incremental reopening, because we want to keep people safe. Public Health England are going to want to gather data to make sure that weddings are safe for people. It's really difficult, because we want to get back to normal, but by the same token, none of us want to put anybody at risk.
No.
Right? So we want to do this carefully, and the industry wants to prove how flipping responsible we are, and how we want to keep everybody we work with safe as well. So a plan for an incremental reopening is one of the things I think we need. And whether that's, we say, right, in April, given these things in terms of the R number, the number of cases, this is what we get. In May, given, more reductions, in this is what we get. Whether it's something that's linked to tiers, if they're thinking of carrying on the tier system when we come out of this. But we want to know what the plan is, because without a plan, businesses no one knows what to do.
In limbo.
Yeah. And when you don't know what to do, you make a decision with the only information that you have. And the only information we have right now is that weddings can't take place.
Yeah.
Right. So we need something to know that there is going to be forward movement. So shouting for a roadmap, shouting for an exit strategy, whatever you want to call it, that's really, really important. We also really, really need parity with the wider events industry. So before Christmas, before we went into lockdown, events suddenly got this kind of like green flag under loads of tiers of you can open it this to this number, to capacity, to whatever. And they weren't having to do sort of any proof, any whatever. They just got reopened. So if you can do that for bigger events, you can do that for weddings too. The guest list is smaller. We know exactly who's turning up. Everyone has a vested interest in keeping everybody safe. Venues, marquee companies and planners, everyone is brilliant at looking after people. So let us look after people and prove how safe we can be. That's so that kind of plan is definitely something that we need. We need to have information so that we can make good decisions for businesses and for couples. As a business, we need some extra financial support. We've been closed in all but name for almost a year. Loads of people in our sector, 400,000 workers in the wedding industry, right? 400,000 people rely on weddings. A lot of those people, for various reasons, have fallen through the gaps in support. They've been excluded from support. They're new self-employed. They've been running their business alongside other businesses. They haven't got the self-employment grant, haven't been able to furlough themselves, because if you're a sole director, you can't furlough yourself, because who's then looking after these clients that you have contractual obligations with, right? So all these things that the government like to trot out about all these support schemes don't work so well for the wedding sector just because of the way we're set up. There's been grants recently, but around 50% of wedding businesses have been turned down for the grants, whether that's because they don't have premises or because the councils have come back and said, but weddings aren't technically closed. Well, they are now, but they weren't before Christmas when these applications were sort of open. So we need some kind of targeted support. It seems ridiculous to me that so many of us have taken out bounce back loans. We've been given government help, right? Whether it's the self-employment scheme, furlough, loans, whatever it is, we have been given some kind of help, and they're prepared to almost throw all that away now to not support us through the next 3-4 months, however long it's going to be. I'm saying 3-4 months like I don't know that's a thing. I'm just making that up. And that seems economically ridiculous, that they're going to let businesses go under who they've supported for almost a year, and they're going to just let us go now, despite the fact that we have business guaranteed for when they do open us up again. Right, we're not starting from scratch. When they reopen weddings, we're not all casting around for couples. We have business ready to go, so we are a good bet, and we can contribute to a recovery the moment they open us back up again.
And that's something I don't think is thought about so much, but weddings are planned 2-3 years in advance. Lots of people were booking last year, at the beginning of last year, they were booking for their 2022 weddings. And so it's like we've got clients waiting.
We have
as soon as we open, we can go.
The business is there. And I was listening to a podcast a little while ago, and they were talking about this, talking about the kind of things that people, the way they might change their lives, the kind of things that they might give up when this is over. We might be a little bit reluctant to be traveling quite so much. We might just go on one holiday a year rather than loads and loads. We might sort of rein in the holidays. We might not be quite so keen on going out in really busy pubs and restaurants just for a little while. We need sort of things to settle down, and there's going to be a lot of people coming out of this, with having taken a real knock to their finances. But weddings is something different. In the last recession back in 2008 kind of time, weddings were almost bulletproof, because a lot of people ring fence that money. You have your wedding pot, and that's your wedding pot. That goes to one side, and you kind of don't touch it. And it's such a big thing. You could put off a holiday, you could put off, a new car, you could put off changing your kitchen. But a lot of people really, and we've seen it in the last year, don't want to put off their wedding. That's a thing in their lives, and it's a marker in the diary. So we're such a good bet economically and sort of from a business perspective. So I've gone off on one, because I get really passionate about this kind of stuff. But financial support is really, really important. And the other thing we really need help with, and this is for couples and for businesses as well, the insurance companies absolutely have to step up right now, because, I've said it on Twitter so many times. We're being, the wedding sector is being hit from all sides by the insurance companies right now. If you're a newly engaged couple, as wedding business, this time of year for me is normally full of inquiries and new business. There's nothing. This year is really quiet. Yes, partly it's because no one knows what's happening this year, but people wouldn't necessarily be booking for this year. They'd be booking for 2022 and they're not. And it's because they can't get insurance for their wedding. So they're really uncomfortable about putting down deposits and paying out money because they're not insured, because the insurers now aren't taking on new business. They're also not paying out to couples who had insurance because they're managing to find loopholes in the wording and bits and pieces. And they're not paying out to businesses on business interruption insurance because they're managing to find loopholes. So how is this working?
It's
this
so
kind
awful.
of industry who was here to supposed to be protecting us has left us high and dry, businesses and couples. And it's not helping now. It's not helping anybody move forward. So we're going for a plan, we're going for parity with events, and we desperately need something to happen with insurance to give everybody a bit more confidence to move forward.
Makes me crazy. Like I've been talking about personal insurance a lot recently. I've got a few friends that are in personal insurance and the devastation that, losing your income protection insurance, how that could affect you. And it just makes me crazy because I understand the importance of having insurance, but when you have insurance companies that do everything they can not to pay out, you can understand why people don't bother. And it just infuriates me because it is so important, and they should pay out when the things that people have paid for, when it happens, they should be paying out, and, they get enough money. And when you think, I've got a friend that works in motorbike insurance, and, listening to him say, the reason that we can bring it down is actually the insurance is like this much. The profit margin is huge.
Well, don't get me started.
Like,
my car has sat on my driveway now for I don't know how long, and I'm still paying the same policy, and I've driven literally, I don't know, I haven't even driven 10 miles in my car this year. It's insane. And it just feels, it's so infuriating because, again, with a few little tweaks, we could get things moving again. It doesn't, the financial support would be brilliant, but if we could get insurance open so couples would start booking, that would alleviate some of the need for the financial insurance for the wedding sector. So it doesn't need all of these things. It just needs someone to turn on a tap somewhere and the trickle to start. And then the momentum will build behind it. But at the moment, it is a little bit like the barriers come down. And I can kind of understand, God, you see the briefings every day and you hear the numbers and your heart just breaks for families and for people. And this is an awful, awful situation. But by the same token, thank goodness for the vaccinations and thank goodness that things are starting to look a little bit more positive further down the track. And that's where the weddings are. The weddings aren't now. The weddings are further down the track. So we're already looking there. And I think that's one of the things that's quite difficult talking to MPs and talking to people sort of in authority, is that they're operating on sort of a very here and now. We need to deal with now. If we're lucky, we'll deal with next week, but we're kind of dealing with now because everything's so all encompassing. And we're not. With weddings, we never deal with just now. We're always looking a bit further down the line. So our heads are up and we're looking forward, and they're looking kind of at the mess that's at their feet right now. So we're not looking for changes. We're not asking for anyone to come out and say weddings can reopen this weekend, crack on. That's not what we want. But we would like a plan for Easter. We would like a plan for the beginning of wedding season. And I hate calling it that because it sounds so sort of trite and cliched, but it is. So many couples from last year put their weddings off to sort of late March, early April and onwards from there. And we have to look at that period. We have to do what we can to protect that. Otherwise, it's just going to be longer until we get back up and running again. And that just feels like that's taking too much of a risk with too many people's livelihoods.
Yeah. So what is it that us as vendors can do to help the campaign? What are the things that we should be doing to help make the noise and get us heard?
There are a few things, and a couple of them might feel slightly difficult, I think, to people in the wedding sector, but please get onto Twitter. Like, I know we love Instagram, and I know we're all about the sort of the nice pictures and the lovely long captions and sort of, sharing the love and getting all over Instagram all the time, but Twitter is really, really important, and it's come into its own again sort of in the last few months. It's where the journalists are, it's where the politicians are. When we make noise on Twitter, and there's been a couple of times where we've sort of organized, like Twitter takeovers, where we said, right, between this time we're going to go on and everyone's going to use the hashtag. And it's got us trending every time in sort of the politics section. And it's perfect because that's where the MPs are sort of scrolling through. That's what they're checking. That's where they want, that's, if you see a load of people all of a sudden sort of all asking the same things, as an MP, I would be standing up going, I really need to get onto this because this is obviously something that's affecting loads of people. I need to know what this is.
Yeah.
So when we make noise on that, it does it really does make a difference. So get back onto Twitter, follow the What About Weddings team if you're a little bit unsure. We will always support you, and you will not be sort of standing up on your own. We are there with you, shoulder to shoulder. So Twitter is one. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well, but Twitter's really powerful for us right now. Yeah. Also, write to your MP. Whether you've done it before or whether you have never done it, and the thought again of writing to an MP just fills you with absolute horror, please do it. Because again, it's that same thing. If they get 20 letters, 10 letters from people in their constituency asking for the same thing, talking about the same topic, they know it's important, and they will stand up and sort of ask those questions and push for stuff on all of our behalves. It's in everybody's interest that we make as much noise as possible right now. Yeah. And just, it's really difficult. It's really difficult, but don't be quiet. Don't be quiet on this. It's far too important to all of us to just sit there and let things happen to us. If we stand up and we say what we're feeling, and we come together and we sort of unite as this massive, important industry, we will be heard, and we are being heard. And the more voices that join in, the better. You're not going to be on your own. I know that sometimes the thought of coming onto Twitter or being political and speaking out is really quite overwhelming, but you will not be on your own when you do. And you will feel better, because you won't just feel that you have sat there and all this stuff it's like being a sort of a pebble in the sea when you're just being buffeted around by tides and none of it is under your control. The minute you start speaking up and start expressing how you feel better, because you're not being shackled and you're not being muzzled, and you feel like you're fighting back. And I feel like right now, if we have one element of control over our lives, that's one thing we can do. So that's what I would say. Definitely come and join us and get loud, and you will have support from people you know and people you've never met before, and it will feel good. I can absolutely promise you.
Oh, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time, because I know you are busy. And yeah, it's just been fantastic to speak to you. We will get all of those details, all of the hashtag, the accounts, the Facebook group, and all of those sorts of things linked in the show notes. So thank you so much for your time, Tamryn. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I hope that you will come on again sometime.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. And if I've gone off on sort of verbal rants about things, it's because I can't tell you how much this means. We just want to get back to work. We want to get couples having the days that they deserve, because we love what we do. Yeah, right? And we said it earlier, this is a privilege. So let's not let this privilege slip past.
Absolutely. Lovely. Thank you so much. That was such a great episode. I hope you'll agree. Just a massive, massive shout out to Tamryn and Annabel and Jessica for all the work you're doing with the hashtag What About Weddings campaign. It was absolutely fantastic to speak with you on the podcast, Tamryn. You can find her over on Instagram and Twitter at The Candid Apple, and those words are capitalised, and also at the official What About Weddings handle, which is capital WAW, lowercase official, capital UK. All of those links will be in the show notes, so head over there at bit.ly/WPC039 and you will find all the links, all the details there for you. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss another fantastic episode, which will be coming next week when we reach episode 40. So I'll see you there. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.